Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, September 23rd, 2022. Time for another show. It's cold out there today. It's cold out there every day. Right. What is this, Miami Beach? You know the drill. We define everything by the movies here on the show. It's cold. It's a little chilly. Anyway, a big break from summer. We did officially break from summer. I guess it was yesterday. Did we not note for the pagans among you that it was the equinox? Was it yesterday, the day before? I don't know. I suppose I should be more sensitive to these things. Just reading through the very humorous Twitter account. Perhaps you have seen it. I don't know if we've mentioned it on the show or not. Jew Who Has It All. Very provocative name. But a great Twitter account who tweets as though, I don't know what the mission here is, but tweets essentially as though she were let's say, public school principal announcing upcoming events, holidays, things that are happening in the schools, as though the United States were a majority Jewish nation and treating all other, therefore, minority faiths with great sensitivity and inclusion in the way we have attempted to do in the past couple of years, but in a it puts the shoe on the other foot, if you will, and it demonstrates a little bit of what it's like to operate as a minority religion in a majority Christian country. And very humorous. The sorts of material, and I was just reading it off to my production staff, as it were, before they were departing for school. Learning to be a better production staff, of course, with stuff like calculus and all that. But anyway, just sort of listing all the account lists all the holiday events coming up. Of course, the Jewish calendar includes, for Monday, and we'll be off the air live anyway, as a result, the New Year celebration of Rosh Hashanah. And then pretty soon thereafter, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, as many of you may know it, whether or not you're Jewish. But at any rate, just sort of approaching things along the lines of listing the fun holiday seasonal activities going on. And don't worry, we're not going to be, we need to conserve class time this year, so we will not be having the sometimes traditional big class New Year's parties next Monday. Instead, they won't be off. They would have been off for New Year's anyway, but we won't be having the big New Year's party today, Friday. Besides, don't worry about it. We'll have a big party in the public school sukkah during Sukkot coming up pretty soon. But lots of fun seasonal activities in the classrooms, mentioning that in art, the students made fun holiday crafts, including holiday bread covers with seasonal symbols like shofars, pomegranates, apples, and honey. But of course, we care about inclusion. We provided Gentile symbols of trees, eggs, and animals for Gentile students' holiday bread covers. Of course, students were encouraged to participate in the popular shofar blowing contest. Have students bring their favorite shofar to see who can sound the longest tekiah blast. Gentile students may bring their own holiday horn if they don't have a shofar. Again, just things that are inapplicable to them, but I love the bread covers with it. Don't worry, if you're not Jewish, we have Gentile symbols, trees, eggs, animals of various sorts. That's just our understanding of, the way you Gentile folks decorate your bread covers. Oh, you don't have bread covers? Oh, okay. And it's not appropriate seasonally to give you trees and eggs? That's interesting. Because if you go over to the supermarket now, you'll find that the sensitive and inclusive supermarket managers have, in fact, noted on their NAFTA calendars, as we have, that there are Jewish holidays coming, which means it's time to stock the end cap displays with matzah and gefilte fish and all sorts of other fun things that might be appropriate for a different Jewish holiday, or things that are not even holiday specific, like Dr. Brown's Black Cherry Soda, or whatever, Tabachnik's products if you're able to get them in the frozen food section. Things like that. Just letting you know that we're thinking about you during your holiday time, and of course they're all celebrated with matzah and everything else. But also noting that the students would be in music singing songs with secular themes featuring topics such as apples and honey, because after all, that's secular. Everybody will be celebrating it. That's not a religious holiday. That's just something that everybody does. You get the idea. That's sort of that's really the thrust of what she's up to in tweeting these things, and reminding everybody that you frequently run into things like that. Well, sure, it's a secular holiday, New Year's, right? Everybody celebrates New Year's. Well, on your calendar, it's New Year. Sure, why not? I mean, if you're gonna close, we'll close too. But you get the idea. Anyway, very important message, I thought. Very interesting take. You might find it interesting. You might find it boring and stupid. You might want to hear about news that's actually happening. Or you may be here today because it's Friday, and traditionally we threaten to, but rarely follow through with, the idea of cleaning out pocket of stories that have been waiting in the wings because they've been overwhelmed, usually by stuff about Trump sneezing or doing something wrong or talking like a maniac. And there's plenty out there about that, and no doubt that we will eventually turn to some of those things as well. But let's see. Of importance today, news-wise, I mean, in terms of happened in the last couple days or so, happened to notice through thumbing through the diaries at Daily Kos, stories pointing at this New York Times story. I chose to pick up this story as opposed to the diaries about it. But jury rules against Project Veritas in the lawsuit. That sounds like a good thing. We can be glad about that. Why is James O'Keefe and his organization in court this time? This time is about the conservative group was found to have violated wiretapping laws again and fraudulently misrepresented itself to a Democratic consulting firm to which it was ordered to pay $120,000, which is no problem for them because the wingnuts donate money to them hand over fist. And it's a cost of doing business for them. Anyway, Adam Goldman covers the story for the Times. A jury in a federal civil case on Thursday, that's yesterday, found that Project Veritas, they suck. That's an editorial comment. A conservative group known for its deceptive tactics, that's actually in there, has violated wiretapping laws and fraudulently misrepresented itself as part of a lengthy sting operation against Democratic political consultants. What do you know? By the way, you might also be describing Ron DeSantis and his migrant policies of importing migrants for mere moments on board a plane into Florida so that he can then claim jurisdiction over them and send them to elsewhere. Or pretend to send them elsewhere and then say, I totally meant to actually send them, but that was really, or rather, it was, I didn't mean to send, I was faking it to punk you, but actually I got caught in the act, and that's why I stopped loading people on the planes, whichever it might be. Anyway, the jury awarded the consulting firm Democracy Partners $120,000. The decision amounted to a sharp rebuke, I guess, of the practices that Project Veritas and its founder James O'Keefe have relied on. This is like the second time I think they've been involved in actual illegal wiretapping, so that's not great. Don't seem to be deterring them by dragging them to court. The other time I can think of is, didn't they try, they fraudulently barged their way into, was it Mary Landrieu's office, and said they were there to fix the phones and put recording devices on it, or they were caught I can't even remember the details. They're constantly getting caught doing these things. This is what they're about. Well, anyway, during the trial, lawyers for Project Veritas portrayed the operation as news gathering and its employees as journalists following the facts. Hopefully the decision today will help discourage Mr. O'Keefe and others from conducting these kinds of political spy operations and publishing selectively edited misleading videos in the future. Yeah, right. But we all feel bad for Robert Kramer, the co-founder of Democracy Partners, who prevailed in this lawsuit, and he said in a statement after the jury had reached a verdict, Project Veritas said it would appeal the decision, so this will drag on longer. In 2016, according to testimony and documents introduced at the trial, Project Veritas carried out a plan to infiltrate Democracy Partners, which worked for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign during, or rather through, the Democratic National Committee. As part of the ruse, a Project Veritas operative posing as a wealthy donor named Charles Roth mentioned to Mr. Kramer that he wanted to make a $20,000 donation to a progressive group that was also a client of Mr. Kramer. Oh, no. Later, the man posing as Mr. Roth told Mr. Kramer that his niece was interested in continuing her work in Democratic circles. After the money was wired from an offshore account in Belize to the group, Mr. Kramer spoke with the woman playing the role of Mr. Roth's niece and offered her an unpaid internship at Democracy Partners. Oh, boy. Okay. The niece used a fake name and email account along with a bogus resume. In his book, American Pravda, Mr. O'Keefe wrote that the donation certainly greased the wheels. Yeah. The operative, whose real name is Allison Moss, it's M2 A's, M-A-A-S, interesting, secretly taped conversations and took documents while working at Democracy Partners. Oh, everyone's taking documents these days. She then supplied the information to her superiors at Project Veritas, which edited the videos and made them public. The videos suggested that Mr. Kramer was, and another man, Scott Foval, F-O-V-A-L, were developing a plan to provoke violence, I'm sure that's the case, by supporters of Donald J. Trump at his rallies. Oh, I see. Okay. That could actually be true. That's easy to do. You know how you provoke violence at a Donald Trump rally? Go to one. Mr. Kramer's lawsuit said the video was heavily edited and contained commentary by O'Keefe that drew false conclusions. He doesn't draw other kinds. According to documents filed with the court in the case, the man playing Mr. Roth had proposed an illegal voter registration scheme, and Kramer rejected it outright as illegal. I'm exposing the truth about these Democratic operatives. The lawsuit contended that Mr. Kramer had lost more than $500,000 worth of contracts because of the deceptions behind the Project Veritas operation, for which he got 100. Okay. Joseph E. Sandler, a lawyer for Democracy Partners, said during opening arguments last week that Mr. O'Keefe was a strong supporter of Mr. Trump and had tried to tip the scales in favor of him during the 2016 election. The operation, Mr. Sandler said, was all carried out for the principal purpose of embarrassing Hillary Clinton and electing Donald Trump. He described the elaborate operation as a painstaking web of lies conjured up by Project Veritas. I don't think they took any pains on it, though. But anyway, according to a Project Veritas email and trial exhibit, Mr. O'Keefe offered cash bonuses to his employees to obtain incriminating statements and $2,500 bonuses if Mr. Trump mentioned their videos in the presidential debates later that October. The email is marked highly confidential. But is it really highly confidential? I'd like to know. I think they should have to prove that. Anyway, at the trial, Mr. Sandler said Project Veritas was trying to uncover what they themselves concocted. Paul A. Colley, a lawyer for Project Veritas, argued that the videos were newsworthy and pointed out that media outlets had published stories about the undercover operation. He said the lawsuit was just sour grapes. In his closing statement, Mr. Colley said Project Veritas had engaged in deceit, deception, and dishonesty. Is that right? Did I read that right? Yeah, I mean, he's the lawyer for Project Veritas, and in his closing statement, he said Project Veritas had engaged in deceit, deception, and dishonesty. The group used those tactics, he said, so that Project Veritas can speak truth to power. But I don't know how and I guess this is why they lost at the trial. How do you speak truth to anybody if your tactics are deceit, deception, and dishonesty? But now I'm speaking truth. I was speaking deceit, deception, and dishonesty before to these guys so that I could later speak the truth to the truth to power. But I think that they were trying to speak the truth to the same people. So sometimes I'm lying to you, but sometimes I'm doing it to speak the truth to you. And that's why the jury said, we think you're stupid and you're liable for $120,000. Anyway, he said there was no evidence that this was a political spying operation, except for the fact that they were spying and the people they were spying on were political operatives. But other than that, there's really no evidence that this was a political spying operation. And the lawsuit was an attack on journalism's. Well, he said journalism, but what we're talking about. The sole purpose of the operation was journalism, Mr. Cowley said. Before the trial, a federal judge ruled that Democracy Partners could refer to Project Veritas's conduct as a political spying operation. Well, makes sense. Project Veritas is facing legal fights on several fronts. In August, some of its employees sued the group, depicting a highly sexualized work culture. Yes, you'll, of course, all remember the famous mission of the SS Dildo back in the earlier days, in which, you know the story, I think. Probably you looked it up at some point if I've mentioned that and you didn't know what it was. Although very few people refer to it that way. This was James O'Keefe seeking to find, I don't know what exactly, incriminating information or get on some tape in an embarrassing situation on, I think, a New York Times reporter, but I forget the details of where she was working, but inviting her to his houseboat, which quite honestly, if I get an invitation to a houseboat, I'm already, I'm suspicious. Houseboat? What? Is this in Amsterdam? This is in New Jersey. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll come on over. And then his big plot was he put out a whole bunch, well, you might have guessed by now, put out a whole bunch of sex toys, and she showed up, and he has video of her showing up and saying, I'm uncomfortable here in your houseboat. It's decorated with a bunch of sex toys. I want to leave. Aha! Gotcha! All right. Well, that was the operation. Anyway, but that wasn't the only highly sexualized prank, I guess, or activity going on in the work culture there. What else was going on? Daytime drinking and drug use were common, and employees worked additional hours without pay. That doesn't sound sexy at all. But the drunkenness stuff, it's not sex, but hey, booze. I mean, that's supposed to be bad. We frown on that, especially as conservative family values types. Anyway, that same month, 2 Florida residents also pleaded guilty in Manhattan federal court to stealing a diary belonging to the president's daughter, Ashley Biden. That's what Project Veritas was last in the news and last mentioned on the show. According to court documents, prosecutors asserted that an employee of Project Veritas had directed the defendants to steal additional items to authenticate the diary in order to tell the truth, you see. You should steal more stuff, and paid them additional money after receiving them. No charges have been filed against Project Veritas or any of its operatives in that Ashley Biden case, interestingly enough. And the group never published the diary, but in a sign that the investigation into the group will continue, the authorities said one of the Florida residents had agreed to cooperate. As part of that investigation, FBI agents conducted court-authorized searches last year of 3 homes of Project Veritas employees, including Mr. O'Keefe. Project Veritas was also ordered in August to pay Stanford University about $150,000 in legal fees after a federal judge tossed the defamation lawsuit the group filed in 2021. Project Veritas also has an ongoing defamation suit against the New York Times, which is, of course, reporting this news. So they're in court all the time. They lose all the time. That's the practice these days. Of course, there's lots still going on with the former guy and his cases. We caught up with it mostly, but there's some additional commentary that I thought might help clarify just how badly he was defeated, especially in the 11th Circuit Court. Also, Alex Jones remains in the hot seat in court and is blowing up every day and being reprimanded by the judges. The lawyers are fighting like mad. It looks like he's going to be out quite a bit of money, and as Greg was mentioning yesterday, probably in bankruptcy administered by an outside third-party bankruptcy trustee as well, because the judges there don't trust them not to just steal all the money or hide all their assets so that the plaintiffs don't have access to it. All right, let's jump over to a couple of those other stories. We'll use the rest of maybe we'll stay in the courtroom area here. I have the Vox Explainer from Ian Millhiser explaining just how bad, and I guess picking out the highlights that I was hoping to do, and I think I trust Ian to do the job, from the 11th Circuit decision, just so you get some idea of exactly what a smackdown it was. Is this the 11th Circuit thing? Yeah, or is it, it could just as easily be explanations of why the special master, who's also been slapping Trump down, has been handing him defeats. Let's see. Trump's defeat in the Mar-a-Lago special master case explained. Even Trump's own appointees had no patience for the rogue judge who sabotaged the DOJ investigation into the former president. That rogue judge, of course, being Eileen Cannon, who I have seen cleverly referred to as Judge Cannon, but spelled with a Q. So it kind of actually looks like QAnon, and you get the idea where that's coming from. It says here, allow me to summarize the Federal Appeals Court decision gutting a series of pro-Trump orders with a single scene from the 1995 Failson comedy Billy Madison. Who are we allowing to do it again? It's Ian Millhiser. He says, as the appeals court decision makes clear, everyone who read Judge Eileen Cannon's decision benefiting Trump is now less intelligent for having done so. I do recall that line, even though I've only seen that 8 out of the required 10 times. I haven't seen Billy Madison that many times, actually. But anyway, the United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit decision in Trump versus the United States utterly savages former President Donald Trump's efforts to slow down a criminal investigation into classified documents that the FBI seized from Mar-a-Lago, his Florida residence. It is equally dismissive of Cannon, the Trump-appointed federal district judge in Florida, who ordered the Justice Department to halt this criminal investigation, at least temporarily. Notably, the appeals panel included 2 other judges who, like Cannon, were appointed by Trump. We didn't get to mention that yesterday. Yes, it was 2 Trump judges on a 3-judge panel that nonetheless slapped this whole thing down. But these 2 Trump judges give Cannon no quarter. Their opinion identifies more than a dozen legal errors in Cannon's decisions, some of them quite obvious and egregious. One of the central issues in this case, for example, is whether Trump could require the FBI to return more than 100 documents seized from his residence, all of which are marked as classified, because they may be his property. But as the 11th Circuit notes, the executive order laying out the rules governing classified documents states that such documents are owned by, produced by, or for, and are under the control of the United States government. Classified documents, by definition, are not the property of a former government official like Trump. The upshot of the 11th Circuit's order is that the FBI may continue its criminal probe into whether Trump violated federal criminal laws governing the handling of national defense information, including the Espionage Act. Trump could conceivably ask the Supreme Court to reinstate Cannon's original decision, but he is unlikely to prevail there, and I think it's now impossible. I don't know if he mentions this at all in his article, but I guess Judge Cannon, in light of the 11th Circuit's decision, apparently took her own order back up and amended her order, deleting most of the parts that were essentially smacked down by the 11th Circuit, which has the effect, has no effect in terms of the immediate impact. That is, the 11th Circuit's decision goes. The special master can stop worrying about determining ownership of the classified materials or even the status of the classified materials, and the FBI can continue with its criminal investigation related to those materials. But on top of that, by deleting it, rather than just saying, well, I made a mistake and I got overruled and we'll let it stand, by deleting those parts of the order, that moots any appeal, I think, of the 11th Circuit's decision. There won't be any record below to bring up. She's simply conceded the point and deleted it as part of her order. So if Trump were to appeal to the Supreme Court and say the 11th Circuit got it wrong, they would say, let me see the order. And they would say, well, I don't understand what you're appealing here. It doesn't say anything about your ownership of the documents. It doesn't say anything about the ability of the FBI to go on with the investigation. Well, she deleted it. It used to say that. Well, then, I don't know what to tell you. Although, of course, the Supreme Court could say anything. Well, we know it. I read in the newspaper it used to say that, so we're going to rule on what it used to say. Ordinarily not something that they would do, but this court, they could do anything. All right, so where were we here? He can, of course, appeal, but he's unlikely to prevail there. While the court's 6-3 Republican-appointed majority often takes extraordinary steps to ensure that the conservative policies Trump supported during his administration remain in effect, they've shown far less personal deference to Trump himself. Last January, for example, the Supreme Court allowed the U.S. House Committee investigating the January 6th attack to obtain Trump White House documents against Trump's objections. Only Justice Clarence Thomas publicly noted his dissent. It is fairly likely, in other words, that this embarrassing chapter for Judge Cannon and for the federal judiciary will come to a close soon. We'll begin on the next section before we exit for the first break on how we got here. Of course, everyone remembers the background. In August, the FBI executed the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. Among other things, they sought physical documents with classification markings that the FBI believed Trump was holding at his residence. The Constitution does not require the FBI to comply with certain restrictions before it can search. Oh, does require. Well, I was thinking, I'm reading, I'm like, does not require? Of course it does. Well, except, there's no mention of the FBI, believe it or not, in the Constitution. Show me in the Constitution where there can be an FBI. Well, that's an implied power. But it does require them, of course, to comply with certain restrictions before searching a private citizen's home. They did all of those things, sought out a search warrant, got it from the federal magistrate, and at this point, probably we play the music and say, all right, well, we'll set it all up for after the break, but you know what they did. The FBI complied with all the requirements, of course. Nevertheless, Judge Cannon determined that Trump is entitled to additional protections that are rarely afforded to any criminal suspect, in large part because of Trump's former position as President of the United States. She also ordered the DOJ to halt its criminal investigation into the documents seized until a court-appointed official known as a special master reviews them. Extraordinary relief.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Where were we? Yes, we were in the middle of Ian Millhiser's recap and discussion of, just what went down yesterday in the 11th Circuit Court. Again, I do actually recommend to you the entirety of the court's decision. It's actually kind of humorous if you know what to look for, but not everybody does. It's good dry humor if you have a little bit of a legal background. But even without, you'll get a lot of those references like, no, that's just stupid. What are you talking about? Overruled is basically what they're saying, but they're not overruling things, but you know what I mean. Anyway, let's see. We left off by saying, the how we got here section. There was the search warrant. They seized the papers. What ends up happening? Although the DOJ complied with all the Fourth Amendment requirements, Trump nonetheless sues and says, no, you can't use these materials because reasons. Judge Cannon determined that Trump is entitled to additional protections that are rarely afforded to any criminal suspect, in large part because he used to be president. She also ordered DOJ to halt its criminal investigation and appointed a special master. Special master is a rare thing, and generally, I think we've mentioned to you before, it's basically used in highly complex litigation where they think if a federal court, if the judge themselves were to spend all the time parsing through all the information, and sometimes it gets really incredibly complicated, that would take up all their time and they wouldn't be able to administer any other cases, and it would be just generally, it would overwhelm the court. So you appoint a special master, usually someone with their own judicial experience, to do the sifting for you so that you can go on and handle the rest of your other caseload. So you see it in, where Trump became aware of it was with the Rudy Giuliani case and other cases, I guess, peripheral to his cases, Michael Cohen as well. Both because, in both cases, because they had raided their offices. Michael Cohen and Rudy Giuliani, both at that time purporting to be officers of the court, lawyers. And so the question was, while we were looking for evidence of your criminal activity, we also possibly seized evidence that might be attorney-client privileged information. So the special master in this case would be the one who would sift through the information in case there's a dispute as between the target of the search, in this case, let's say Rudy Giuliani. Like sometimes if you search an attorney's office, that usually will trigger the possibility that you might need special treatment for the evidence. Not always a special master, but at the very least, whoever's seizing the evidence will often bring in a filter team so that lawyers knowledgeable in what really constitutes materials that might carry attorney-client privilege, but who aren't involved in the prosecution of the case, will sift through these things and try and make sure that only things that they are relatively certain will pass muster as non-privileged are passed on to the investigative team and the prosecutorial team so that they're not contaminated by evidence that they shouldn't have gotten a hold of in the first place, but just got by virtue of the fact that they were doing a generalized search. At any rate, with Rudy Giuliani, the issue is he's a criminal and his clients are criminals, and so he will, it is believed, take advantage of the attorney-client privilege and try to abuse it by trying to claim that actual evidence of his crimes are in fact privileged materials. And sometimes they are, but sometimes those privileges can be overcome by the fact that they are evidence of criminal activity, and the crime fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege will apply. You get the idea. It does get complicated. So in a case like Giuliani's, where he'll claim that everything is attorney-client privileged, there's a high volume of stuff. Plus, of course, he's disputing things. And then there will be some things that might be a close call. They really were prepared for a client, but were they prepared as part of preparation for litigation or representation in a legal capacity, or were they political materials that might have passed between somebody that he also represented as a client? And if it's a close call, then you want a special master on hand to help sort that stuff out. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's other kinds of complicated litigation. I think I've mentioned before, the only other time I had really had experience with special masters being appointed when there were original jurisdiction cases before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court isn't always acting as an appellate court, that is reviewing the decisions of courts below, but sometimes has original jurisdiction, as in cases between the states, when one state sues another for one reason or another. I think there's original, as I recall, right? Original jurisdiction in those cases at the Supreme Court. It's a rare thing, but when you're talking about any case with original jurisdiction, you're developing an enormous record of evidence for trial, which is not something that the court is particularly good at or particularly used to doing, because it's a rare thing. And of course, you got 9 justices sitting as judges, and they'll all want to, do their own special review of the materials, et cetera, and it becomes a logistical nightmare. So a special master is frequently the answer there. Give us a report on what you think is going on here. Make sure it's heavily documented and we can go back and see the originals, but then hand all the justices and their clerks your report so that the Supreme Court can go on doing the business of, well, in these days, doing the wrong thing and overturning every precedent in favor of Trump and MAGA weirdos that they can. You don't want to distract them from something like that. Anyway, so that's what the special master business is about. But none of that matters anymore because although the order from Cannon, I'll continue with Ian Millhiser's analysis here, Cannon's order permitted the DOJ to continue a parallel investigation assessing how Trump's possession of these documents might have damaged national security, right? She stopped the criminal investigation into Trump, but allowed the intelligence investigation into what damage may have been done. The Justice Department warned Cannon that the two investigations cannot be readily separated, in no small part because they are being conducted by the same personnel. Actually, something that, immediately occurred to us here, us being me, and then me telling you. So, pat on the back for me for saying so, for you for listening and not calling in and saying you're crazy. You recognized that it was going to be difficult to separate those things too. But for some reason, it really wasn't in the initial reporting. There wasn't a lot of discussion of that, but it seemed obvious to me. But I'm sure someone was reporting it because it's that damn obvious. I just missed their reports. Anyway, so Cannon wasn't swayed, and last week she appointed Raymond Dearie, a senior federal judge, as that special master to review the documents. Meanwhile, the Justice Department sought limited relief from the 11th Circuit. The DOJ has not yet challenged Cannon's order appointing the special master, but actually I think that the 11th Circuit decided on it nonetheless, or instructing him to comb through the non-classified documents seized from Trump, but it did seek the appeals court's permission to continue its criminal and national security investigations into the classified materials. It also sought an order preventing either the special master or Trump's lawyers from seeing the classified documents. Okay, right. So there is that. So they didn't negate the appointment of the special master entirely. But by the way, part of I guess two reasons why Trump sought a special master. One we discussed yesterday was he doesn't really care what happens. It's going to take longer if there is a special master, so he's happy with that. But they were claiming that they were hoping that he would be able to take a look at the classified documents and rule on whether or not they were in fact classified, which is a bit of a weird thing all by itself, and we'll get to that a little bit later, perhaps. We'll just mention that in our segue out of this and into the weirder news, believe it or not. But they were hoping that he would spend some time reviewing that, and I think that probably isn't happening either, based on his rulings in the special master's own proceedings. But, okay, well, at any rate, it did seek the court's permission to continue with the national security investigations, the DOJ did, and to basically say, all right, well, the special master doesn't not only have to rule on the classification of these documents, but because they don't have to, they also don't have to see the thing, so they don't have to worry about any more leaks or the information spreading any further or any more time wasted on that question. On Wednesday evening, a 3-judge 11th Circuit panel, which includes Trump appointees Britt Grant and Andrew Brasher, granted both of the DOJ's requests. So now, the 11th Circuit's opinion paints Cannon as a hack, an incompetent, or both. The panel's opinion is 29 pages long, and about half of those pages are devoted to reciting the facts of the case and summarizing what has happened in this litigation so far. The court doesn't actually begin its legal analysis of Cannon's orders until page 15 of the opinion, but it quickly identifies a fatal error in her reasoning, if you can call it reasoning. While there are extraordinary circumstances where a court may need to step in after law enforcement seizes property pursuant to a valid warrant, the 11th Circuit explains those extraordinary circumstances only arise when the government displayed a callous disregard for a criminal suspect's constitutional rights. But Cannon conceded in her decisions that the Justice Department had not shown such disregard for Trump's rights. That alone, according to the opinion, is reason enough to conclude that the district court abused its discretion in ruling in favor of Trump. Now, that's the usual terminology and the standard by which a appeals court will overturn a court below. That's the whole reason for being of the appeals courts, to see whether, as some people might allege, as appellants would allege before them, that the court below abused its discretion. I mean, it sounds worse than it really is, like made a mistake is essentially it, but the only kind of mistake they usually can make is abusing their discretion. Anyway, but the term applies, and it applies pretty well here. This is exactly what she did, is that she basically said, well, I'm allowed a great deal of discretion in deciding what kind of harm and how bad it is these plaintiffs have alleged has happened, and whether or not I believe it's happened, and I can, I've got broad discretion to rule that, well, just for safety's sake, we'll get a special master in here and he'll pore over these things because it's an extraordinary case and it involves a former president and it's a very touchy subject and yada, yada, yada. And they say, well, no, you really abused your discretion here because what you did was you said, I have that wide discretion and I like Trump. And although none of the facts fit here, and none of them argue in favor of delaying things, appointing a special master, prohibiting the FBI from using these documents in their criminal investigation, etc., etc., none of the conditions under which such extraordinary relief, as I called it just before the break, would be permitted are in existence here. And yet you did the thing anyway and saying, well, it's a close call. So I'll call it this way. And the 11th Circuit said, it's not only not a close call, it's not a call at all. I mean, it's just a swing and a miss here. None of the required elements are present in this case. But you said, if you squint at it just right, you could see maybe one or two of them. Well, the court said, well, first of all, you shouldn't have to squint that hard. Second of all, even if you squint and you can see one or two of the elements that might call for this sort of delay and this sort of relief, the rule is you got to see three, all of them. And at least one of them is missing entirely. And it doesn't really matter how close the call is on the other two. You need three and you don't have it. That's an error. Goodbye. So there you go. That alone, according to the opinion, is reason enough to conclude the district court abused its discretion. Having identified this error, the 11th Circuit then spends an additional 12 pages flagging more than a dozen other errors in Cannon's reasoning. Among other things, the court notes that Trump cannot possibly have a personal interest. That's what he's claiming here. Remember, these are I own these items. They should be returned to me. But they're marked classified. Well, you cannot possibly have a personal interest in retaining classified government documents. It explains that there is no evidence that any of these records were declassified, despite the fact that he went on Sean Hannity and said, I declassified them in my mind. Part of the Article 2, Article 2 says that I can declassify things just by thinking about them, which is what he meant was just by imagining that he has declassified them. That's enough. It's an absurd standard, obviously, though it has been, played with in the past, the idea that the president can instantly declassify documents if necessary. It first came up in my consciousness during the George W. Bush administration and Scooter Libby situation, that they gave away, revealed classified information in trying to interest reporters or Scooter Libby trying to interest reporters in Valerie Plame's background with the CIA so that they could discredit the claims of her husband about what he found out about the administration's claims about yellow cake uranium. You remember that whole thing? Well, of course, they ended up having to out Valerie Plame as a spy in order to make that work. I mean, it didn't. In order to try to make that work. Well, she's a CIA operative, and you know how they are. Yeah, you mean fiercely loyal to the United States, generally speaking. Yeah, I'm kind of aware of that. Well, the point is, so then people realized, if you've outed her as a CIA undercover operative, isn't that classified information? Oh, and didn't you just reveal it? I did. Except it wasn't classified anymore. The president totally declassified that because, after all classification powers derive from the executive power. He's the chief executive. He can obviously declassify things at his order. All right, well, did you have any paperwork that showed that it was declassified? And that's where I think they came up with the explanation of, well, it doesn't require paperwork. It just requires the president saying this is no longer classified. And he did say that. Did he? Did you have him on tape anywhere? Is there any record of his saying it? We don't have to make those records because, yeah. So you see how crazy this gets. And of course, in terms of keeping information classified or deciding what to do if the information is revealed, it becomes impossible to then prosecute anybody. It's basically like an instant pardon for anybody that the president likes who happens to have revealed classified information. As you can say, at the time it was revealed, I had already thought in my brain that it was declassified. I just my brain didn't tell anybody. So for all intents and purposes, it looked to the outside world as though classified information has been revealed. But in fact, it was declassified. I just forgot to tell anybody that it was declassified. Except now, everything in the world that's stamped classified, we don't know whether it's classified or not because some president might have thought about it at some point. That would be a terrible standard. But Donald Trump is sitting there in his interview insisting that is the standard. And in case you were worried that he represents some enormous, crazy-ass departure from Republican governance theory of the past and is just, some quantum leap of awfulness beyond everybody else, remember that this essentially did begin or was at least asserted with the George W. Bush administration, who's supposed to look like some, golden age of republicanism now, by contrast. Anyway, where were we with this? Having identified this error, right, the 11th Circuit then goes on and finds the 12 other errors, including that this idea of declassifying documents with your brain is ridiculous. And it holds that Cannon, it was wrong to order the Justice Department to show these documents to the special master or to Trump's lawyers, because they're freaking classified. The Supreme Court has recognized that for reasons too obvious to call for enlarged discussion, that's the court saying, duh, to you. Not to you, but to the Trump team here. Reasons too obvious to call for enlarged discussion. The protection of classified information must be committed to the broad discretion of the agency responsible, and this must include broad discretion to determine who may have access to it, the 11th Circuit explains, quoting from the Supreme Court's decision in Department of Navy versus Egan from 1988. Again, Trump could conceivably ask the Supreme Court to reinstate Cannon's original order, but he just lost before a conservative panel dominated by judges that he appointed. So, it is unlikely that even this Supreme Court would side with him, but don't put it past him. And because the most important parts of Cannon's order have now been blocked by the 11th Circuit, the Supreme Court's GOP-appointed majority cannot simply sit on the case for months before eventually reversing Cannon, a tactic the justices have used in the past to leave legally dubious lower court orders reinstating Trump-era policies in place for nearly a year. It is likely, in other words, that the DOJ will be allowed to continue its criminal investigation into Trump without significant further interference from Judge Cannon or elsewhere in the judiciary. Okay. So that brings us up to speed there. Although, again, we're probably a little bit behind and should have, I don't know if I put aside or not, articles about exactly what, maybe we'll see if we can stir that up during one of the breaks, exactly what Judge Cannon did to her own order. But in other venues, the special master, still at work, also has been smacking the Trump team around. The other day we heard his incredulity about the claims about having declassified the documents by thinking they were declassified. But now there's an even better one. They've one-upped it here. But they were in the position of sitting before the special master, who is a federal judge, and saying, These documents are, not only were they declassified, but they were basically saying, shouldn't the government have to prove that they were classified in the first place? Or certainly they would have to prove that they're classified now, given that we say we mentally declassified them. And the judge said, as I explained the other day, well, look, I have the assertion on the one hand that they're classified, and then I can look at the document and I see that it's marked classified. You say the president mentally unclassified it, but then you're unwilling to actually say that. Or the president or the former president says this in public forums, but you're unwilling to say so in any of the record in front of me. So what I have is the assertion of the government that says it's classified, and then your thing that says, we'll tell you later whether we think it's classified or not and what our reasons for doubting it are. And so I weighed the two. One affirmative assertion that it's classified and one thing that says I'm not going to say anything. Well, put those two things on the scale. The only thing I can do is rule that they're classified. So as a matter of law, they're classified. You lose. I mean, you have to show up and make an argument if you want to win, and you won't do it. So you lose. And then today, word that yesterday was all about a similar situation with respect to Trump's claims about the FBI planting evidence. Special Master asks Trump team to back up claim FBI planted evidence. Reported in The Hill by Rebecca Beisch. And let's see. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing the name correctly. By the way, if you want to take a crack at it, Beitsch. Got to be careful with that one. The special master assigned to review the documents taken during the August search of Mar-a-Lago is asking former President Trump to back up his claim that the FBI planted evidence in his Florida property. Judge Raymond Dearie, special master, yada yada, told Trump's attorneys that they would need to submit a sworn declaration that details a list of any specific items set forth in the FBI's detailed property inventory that plaintiff asserts were not seized from the premises. Trump made the insinuation just 2 days after his home was searched. Everyone was asked to leave the premises. They wanted to be alone, he wrote in a post on his social media platform, without any witnesses to see what they were doing, taking, or hopefully not planting. I love that. Terrible syntax. Trump asserted as recently as Wednesday evening during an interview with Sean Hannity that the FBI may have planted evidence during the search. The problem that you have, here we are we talking Trump here? The problem that you have is they go into rooms. They won't let anybody near. They wouldn't even let them in the same building, which is a lie. Did they drop anything on those piles? Or did they do it later? He said. Neither Trump nor his attorneys have supplied any evidence to back up such claims. The plan from Dearie also asked for the attorneys to list a description of contents or location within the premises where the item was found is incorrect, as well as to break down any property that they say was taken during the search but not listed among the FBI's inventory. In other words, they said, you claim that this whole thing was done in a low-down, dirty, rotten way. Show me what. What do you think was done incorrectly, and why do you think it was done incorrectly? And basically, they've come up with nothing so far. The request marks the second time Dearie has asked Trump's legal team to back its claims. A Monday filing from the Trump team indicated Dearie had asked the former president's lawyers to explain whether he had, in fact, ever declassified the intelligence records found in his home. So, all right. I think we're up to speed there, too. That's the second time that the fantastical claims have finally been called to account in the special master proceedings. But it doesn't seem to stop them because, of course, they're not looking for... That's good evidence of empty wheels theory, that they're not really looking for legal wins. They're just looking to drag their feet in all of this. So, okay, what other stories do I have to share with you? Well, let's see. Perhaps... all right. We'll maybe do one or two more things on the legal front before switching gears at the top of the hour. Judd Legum has been continuing to report on the DeSantis Martha's Vineyard type stunts, and now the new stunt in which an empty plane showed up somewhere in which he said, I was punking you, and everybody else said, no, you got caught and changed your mind. What does Judd have to say about it? This tweet thread, which I guess preceded Another entry from his Popular Info newsletter. DeSantis aide Christina Pushaw, who we all think is Perla, really, said that I, Judd Legum, was, quote, punked, along with other members of the media, by reporting that DeSantis had scheduled a flight of migrants from Texas to Florida to Delaware. Pushaw said the DeSantis campaign are lying. Pushaw didn't say that she's the DeSantis campaign. Pushaw and the DeSantis campaign are lying, says Judd Legum. Follow along for the receipts. Here's the deal. Not only was this flight scheduled by DeSantis, but the Miami Herald reports that DeSantis's operative had already recruited another group of migrants, put them up in a hotel, and had them sign, quote, consent forms, saying that they were traveling to Delaware. And here is the Miami Herald's report on that, attached to the tweet. These migrants, like the ones sent to Martha's Vineyard, were promised jobs and other benefits upon arriving in Delaware. It was the same playbook, luring these migrants onto the trip under false pretenses. On September 19th, this second group of migrants was told that they were leaving at 5 a.m. the next day to board a flight that would take them to Delaware. What else happened on Monday? A Texas sheriff announced that he was launching a criminal investigation into the conduct of DeSantis and his agents. It was after that announcement that the flight was abruptly canceled. So no, I was not punked, and neither was anyone else in the media. We were reporting accurately on DeSantis's plans to exploit more migrants, but law enforcement began to take an interest, and DeSantis changed his plans. I will continue to report the facts on DeSantis's scheme and ignore his baseless attacks from his operatives. More updates, of course, sign up for and read his Popular Information newsletter, and there's a link provided to do so. Also a link, of course, to the Miami Herald's reporting on it. But, all right, so I think that does fill us in on exactly what was happening. I wasn't entirely clear what the latest was on the DeSantis scheme, but now we've got it. Plus, it's time to take our top of the hour break, and really time for us to switch gears and get to some of those other crazier stories that are also of interest. Good background information, just how the world's going to hell and in what form of handbasket. What color is that handbasket? Well, some color commentary on that when we return. They won't be foreign topics to you. I wonder if I can find. There's got to be some in here that are actually foreign topics. Anyway, and then we'll see how weird it gets, I guess. But I think we've done a pretty good job curating the stories for you, except for the fact we haven't told you any of the stories, and that's the big problem that we aim to solve on Fridays. We talk a big game, but we rarely get to it. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back now to You Know Where, the Kagro in the Morning Show here on You Know Where, Netroots Radio. Okay, now that we're done with our welcoming, let's dive back into Pocket and scroll down a little further. Let's see, we'll segue towards the weird by remaining in the familiar ground, but with a new twist. The Proud Boys. What the hell with those guys? There, that's the news. No, there's more. Let's see. There's one story of a Proud Boys memo, and I didn't realize that the Proud Boys wrote memos. I thought they were too proud, let's say, to be writing those memos. The Guardian has an interesting story. The Proud Boys memo that reveals meticulous planning for street-level violence. Perhaps that's how we'll segue into it, and then go into... So a little bit of militia focus here for just a few minutes. Proud Boys memo reveals meticulous planning for street-level violence, which seems very un-Proud Boy-like, both to have a memo and meticulous planning. Street-level violence, that's what they're all about. Why don't we get to that? And how many memos do you need? You know, this is like an old, like a joke here. How many memos does it take to go punch people in the face? None. But we have them. So, I don't know. We'll see what you think about this. Meanwhile, they're dressed up, and all this picture is illustrated of illustrating the story has some of the Proud Boys in lots of the Proud Boy yellow and black gear, and it's really kind of funny that they just have logoed gear, and they're all dressed up like as though it was Fashion Week for them or something. I mean, they look terrible, so they wouldn't really cut it at Fashion Week. It's just weird that they have a dress up thing, which again, you know, seems kind of anti-Proud Boy, but whatever. It's part of the image, and it's also part of their defense. I thought you thought we were just a bunch of street brawlers. We're just a dress-up club that likes to drink beer. We'll see. Anyway, Ed, you'll see where I'm going with that later on. Ed Pilkington in New York writes this for The Guardian. What's the deal? The document is so dowdy and formal, he begins, it resembles the annual minutes of a society of tax accountants. And this is what I was meaning about the strategy. Is like, is this meant to look like if at trial it were presented, you could say, you guys know who the Proud Boys are. They would never do something like that. Are you sure that this is their document? Maybe it was forged. Can you really be serious? Well, anyway, its index lists sections on objectives and rules of engagement and carries an addendum that provides recommendations for hotels and parking. But I can believe it. I guess before I get too far into it, I'll just say, one, they love jargon and they love anything that makes them sound like they're paramilitary. Objectives, rules of engagement. But at heart, they're a bunch of lazy bums, and so what they really want to know about is hotels and parking. Like they're street toughs and brawlers and fighting a revolution, but they're not going to sleep in tents and fields like an army. They're going to want, hotels with mini bars and stuff because they love snacks and beer. Because they're tough guys. Sorta, you see how it goes. All right. On the cover, has a cover. 2 words give a clue to the notoriety of the group that produced it. MAGA and warning. Interesting. That and the date, January 5th, 2021, that is, of course, the day before the U.S. Capitol attack. What goes unsaid on the cover and is barely mentioned throughout the 23 pages, almost 29 like the 11th Circuit, is that this is the work of one of the most violent political gangs in America. The far-right street fighters told by Donald Trump to stand back and stand by, the Proud Boys. And, of course, they're very proud of the fact that they're referred to that way. I think they're among, I don't know, it might be an exaggeration. It depends what you mean. The most dangerous and violent political gangs. And it's certainly a political gang. But then again, I guess it depends on what you mean by political gang. Like the Oath Keepers are a political gang. They don't think so, but they are. 3%ers, etc. Those guys seem more dangerous. They're more into the guns and clandestine assassination ideas and kidnappings and things. Proud Boys punch you in the face, but they do it more frequently. And so there's more activity from Proud Boys, more random, pose more of a threat to random people on the street than high-level, figures of authority, et cetera, et cetera. But at any rate, it's all a matter of degrees, I guess. The document, published by The Guardian for the first time, gives a very rare insight into the meticulous planning that goes into events staged by the far-right club. The document was obtained from a Proud Boys member by the extremism reporter Andy Campbell as he researched his new book, We Are Proud Boys, How a Right-Wing Street Gang Ushered in a New Era of American Extremism. The book will be published on Tuesday. Today's Friday, so I guess we missed it. Campbell shared the document with The Guardian. It's here in Scribd form. But yeah, okay, interesting. Strategic Security Plan for New York City MAGA March, a January 10th New York City MAGA/Patriot event created by who? Randy Ireland, president of HGBC of New York City, which I don't know if I know who that is, but it updated January 5th, 2021. It's interesting. So the date is January 5th, and they therefore allude to the January 6th proximity, but it is a plan for a event in New York City, which is interesting, and which I guess didn't come together either. The Proud Boys have been designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center and are alleged to have acted as key organizers of the violent assault on the Capitol. In the wake of January 6th, which has been linked to the deaths of 9 people, the New York March, featured in the document, was called off, and the strategy so fastidiously laid out was never implemented. But the document remains sharply revealing. In what sense? We'll read on. It shows the lengths to which the Proud Boys go to prepare for potentially violent encounters and then to cover their tracks, something prosecutors have stressed but that has never been seen in the group's own words. It exposes the militaristic structure and language of the Proud Boys have adopted, and their aspiration to become the frontline vigilante force in a Trump-led America. It also provides clues as to how the group continues to spread its tentacles throughout the U.S., despite the fact that many of its top leaders, including its national chairman, Enrique Tarrio, are behind bars awaiting trial on charges of seditious conspiracy. The purpose of the document is to provide a strategic security plan and a call to action, summoning Proud Boys members to a pro-Trump MAGA march that was scheduled for New York City on January 10th, 2021. That was 4 days after Congress was to certify Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 presidential election, the occasion that would be targeted by the fatal insurrection. The author of the document is Randy Ireland, who is president of the group's New York branch. The Hell's Gate Bridge chapter, is one of the most prominent Proud Boys in the U.S. Northeast. The paper was circulated through Telegram, the encrypted chat app widely used by the Proud Boys as an organizing tool, to at least 9 other chapters in New York and beyond. Campbell told The Guardian the decentralized structure of the group, into what it claims are 157 active chapters in all but 3 states, is one of the Proud Boys' greatest strengths, as reflected in the autonomous nature of the New York planning. Chapter leaders like Randy can create their own events, run independently of each other, Campbell said. Enrique Tarrio and other leaders are in prison, but these guys are going to continue what they're doing. Next section, we will not disappoint. The language in the planning paper is overly militaristic. Ireland designates himself as General of Security Detail, while his underlings in the chain of command are VPs of Recruiting, Scout Security, and Team Leads. The plan is for 60 or so Proud Boys at a January 10th event in Manhattan to be corralled into 7 tactical teams of 5 to 8 men each. They are all men, as one of the overriding values of the group is misogyny. Members are told to bring protective gear, including knife/stab protection, helmets, gloves, boots, etc., and to make use of radio channels, walkie-talkies, or telegram to communicate with each other. They are to stick together in groups and under no circumstances allow normies, ordinary Trump supporters who are not Proud Boys, or females, into their ranks. Their presence will jeopardize the health and safety of all those involved with security and simply cannot be allowed to happen! ! Ireland writes, maps produced at the back of the document show positions scouts and tactical teams should adopt at key points along the route of the march, which was planned to start at Columbus Circle and past Trump Tower. That spot is understood in a very public way to hold special meaning for us, the paper said, referring to Trump's home on Fifth Avenue. We will not disappoint, that in all caps here. Campbell, who has been reporting on the Proud Boys since they started turning up at Trump rallies in early 2017, describes them as America's most notorious political fight club. In the planning paper, he sees equal parts fantasy and danger. Okay, so clear-eyed there, I think. I agree. He confirms my priors. These guys see themselves as super soldiers, like some sort of military outfit. On one level, it's funny, as nothing is in fact going to pan out the way they say it will. But on another level, it's alarming because it shows how much thought they put into this stuff. In We Are Proud Boys, Campbell traces the group from its birth in 2015 and 16 through to its central role on January 6th when a member, Dominic Pezzola, became the first person to breach the U.S. Capitol. At least 30 Proud Boys have been charged in relation to the insurrection, including Tarrio and 4 others accused of seditious conspiracy, among the most serious indictments yet handed down. Even though indictments are handed up, but you get me. The group was invented by the British-born founder of Vice magazine, Gavin McInnes, who branded himself a Western chauvinist and peddled in bigotry. McInnes floated the Proud Boys name on his online chat show in May of 2016, introducing them as a gang and inventing a uniform, a black Fred Perry polo shirt with yellow trim. McInnes was careful to brand his creation as harmless fun, a satirical, male-only, patriotic drinking club that later attached itself to all things Trump. But Campbell argues that from the outset, political violence was baked in. A Proud Boy was an organizer of the 2017 Unite the Right rally at Charlottesville, Virginia, during which an anti-fascist protester was murdered. The group has held violent gatherings in Portland, Oregon. Outside a Republican event in New York in 2018, several members were arrested and charged with felonious assault. Proud Boys membership is structured into 4 ranks known as degrees. The 4th granted once you get arrested or get in a serious violent fight for the cause, as McInnes himself explained. In an interview with Campbell for the book, McInnes denied promoting violence and insisted the Proud Boys were never proactively aggressive, only reacting to left-wing attacks. That official line is reiterated in the document published by The Guardian. Ireland is careful to portray the Proud Boys as a defensive group. He wishes, if any violence does spout off, all Proud Boys are expected to respond immediately, only so far as to eliminate and end that threat to them or others. Nice writing. Very important. Once the threat has been neutralized, we stop. Yeah, sure. But there is a glaring contradiction. Ireland presents his chapter as a non-violent organization, yet it goes out seeking violence. He assigns the group, uninvited, the role of a vigilante police force. We are there as the first line of defense for all event attendees, he writes. That contradicts himself by saying the only role of the Proud Boys is to play a backup role to law enforcement and to force them to do their jobs. That speaks volumes. It carries the implication that if the police will not assail anti-fascist protesters, Proud Boys will. I've reported that at Proud Boys events where they stood back and relaxed as police lobbed tear gas and other munitions into the crowd of counter-protesters, Campbell said. Then the Proud Boys didn't have to do what Randy Ireland is hinting at here, step in and do the fighting themselves. For Campbell, the most disturbing aspect of the document is that with its soft-lensed double talk and contradictory meanings, it falls into arguably the main ambition of the Proud Boys, the normalization of political violence. Despite having so many leaders behind bars, the group is prospering. As new chapters pop up, Americans are increasingly inured to the idea of having heavily armed gangs in public settings. Proud Boys have posed as security details at anti-abortion rallies, anti-vaccination demonstrations, pro-gun protests, and, of course, pro-Trump rallies. And by the way, also at school board events, when people go to yell and scream about CRT or trans students in the system or what have you, Proud Boys show up for those as well. Proud parents should be at these meetings, not Proud Boys, but there they are. I just wanted to go and help plan the bake sale, but the Proud Boys showed up and decided that what really needed to happen was that all parents should be beat up for Trump. Doesn't sound real good. Anyway, the street-level violence the Proud Boys helped create is now being carried out by regular people, Campbell said. You saw it on January 6th. You see it at Planned Parenthood and LGBTQ events where people are harassed and attacked by everyday Americans. But of course, that's the end of the article. But I should note, they're also attacked by other militias and street gangs as well, like the Patriot Front, about which I have another article to share. But I think I'll make this stop first at, so whatever happened to Gavin McInnes and what is he up to these days? And I have this interesting piece from earlier in the week from HuffPost. This is just a new twist on things. Gavin McInnes's wife, yeah, he's got one, threatens neighbors. What do you know? Over hate has no home here signs. They have signs on their lawns because they know they live next to the McInneses, and they don't like it very much. And they say, we don't like that you're part of a hate group. And now they're out there threatening the rest of them. The Proud Boys founder's newest battleground is his neighborhood. His new enforcer is his wife, Emily McInnes, writes Andy Campbell for HuffPost. Proud Boys founder Gavin McInnes usually fights his own battles, that's a questionable statement, by way of inciting his membership to commit acts of violence. But now that his ritzy community in Westchester County, New York has begun to take a stand against him, he has apparently employed a new enforcer to do his dirty work, his wife, Emily McInnes. who has been privately intimidating her neighbors and threatening them with lawsuits, HuffPost has confirmed. By the way, before I go on, I've been thinking about this since it was mentioned in the Guardian article. Like, what is it that enables Gavin McInnes to live in a ritzy Westchester County community after all, if he is chiefly known as the head of a street gang? That's not usually that lucrative. I guess you could mug people and steal their money, but that's not what they're supposedly doing. Are they selling drugs? I don't know. But what is it? Well, we're reminded of the other things that we were told about McInnes, is that he's the co-founder of Vice Media, which I guess is a role he's, no longer in or stepped out of, but it might still provide him a stream of income or whatever. And it occurs to me, we read things from Vice all the time. Vice has got, a series of shows that they air on one of the cable channels, HBO or something like that. And I guess they say, well, there's lots of people tied up in Vice and doing the reporting, and McInnes isn't directly tied to it anymore. But I don't know. I wonder if it provides a stream of income to him. And if it does, just because he holds shares in it because he was one of the founders or whatever, it does make you wonder and question the whole thing. Like, is this, realistic for us as a country that we can have street gang leaders as founders of media organizations that claim not to have anything else to do with him anymore, but then get lucrative media deals, and then suddenly, for some reason, the street gang leader is living in Westchester County and has this home in a ritzy neighborhood, and obviously we're paying for this. We should not be allowing this. How is this possible? Shouldn't he be living in flop houses somewhere to stay tough, if nothing else? Anyway, something worth investigating, and I guess probably a good, makes We Are Proud Boys sound like it might be a good read. Anyway, last week, HuffPost reported on his intensifying spat with his neighbors in the cozy upscale village of Larchmont, just north of New York City. The extremist leader sent letters to local residents who displayed "Hate has no home here" signs in their yards, complaining that the message amounts to an attack on him and his family. That's weird, because of course they're just saying, look, we just generally don't like hate as a motivator. Hate has no home here. It could be anything. It could be we don't like people who are anti-trans or otherwise anti-LGBTQ or other, or plus, whatever. I forgot the plus on that one. Or are racist or whatever it is. It's a pretty general message. But of course, Gavin McInnes thinks it's an attack on him. And it may be, but even so, too bad. So what? But he's a guy who thinks, he occupies a place in the world where somehow he gets away with running around saying, I'll kill you, I'll punch you in the face, I'll have other people murder you, and everybody just goes, well, that's just Gavin McInnes being Gavin McInnes. I don't know. Anyway, that's what they should be doing, and they should be personal attacks on him. They absolutely should be. You put yourself in the spotlight like that, people are going to respond to you. And that's his whole MO. Right? Is he's thinking, I will be doing that to other people that I don't like, people who are trans activists or, forget it. I don't know why they like to seem to target trans activism, in particular, more so than anyone else in the LGBTQ plus spectrum, but whatever. But whoever they target, whether it's, people at Boston Children's Hospital, like Libs of TikTok or whatever else, they threaten them, and that seems to be their MO. And they say their targets have made themselves vulnerable this way, and he's made himself vulnerable this way. But they don't do irony; they just do punch you in the face. Gimmitarians don't care, and punchitarians care even less, I guess. Anyway, where were we? Right. They say it's an attack on him and his family. The irony of such a suggestion is not lost on them, it is stated, and there's a link to an additional piece, which is probably also by Andy Campbell. I'm just kind of curious. Yeah, it is. What that alludes to. Proud Boys founder Gavin McInnes can get back to Antifa after he battles his neighbors. Okay, but it's another one. This is from I guess they've been doing the yard sign thing in his neighborhood for some time, because this is from January 4th, 2019. So they've been pestering him for several years with those signs, but now his wife is doing the fighting for some reason. On Monday night, that simmering local feud began to boil over. As a matter of fact, okay. Now I'm like, well, wait a second. Is this years in the making that I'm just reading this article now? No, this article too is older, and sometimes I've lost the chain of how this came to me, and it must have been being tweeted to illustrate some other current point that I would only pick up on this now in Twitter. But this too is from January of 2019. So let's see. Sometimes I will position in pocket right near there why it is that this would have come to my attention at this point, but I don't see any clues about this. All right. Well, very interesting. I guess I'll read on just in terms of learning or letting everybody know exactly what kind of jerk this guy is and how he's involving his wife in this stuff now. All right. So as it turns out, I missed the date on this thing, and this is from 2019. So it hasn't been waiting in pocket since 2019. It's only been a week. So, well, maybe two at this point. Well, where were we? On Monday night, which was way back when, that simmering local feud began to boil over. The McInneses joined a private online discussion about the squabble held by the Larchmont community on the social media app Nextdoor in an apparent attempt to clear the air with their neighbors. I don't think so. A transcript of their comments mostly parroted lies that Gavin McInnes told about his past and his affiliation with the Proud Boys last week was obtained by HuffPost. Now, they're going to jump straight into something that I missed and something that we all missed. There must have been some exchange in which this happened, but there's rarely any good excuse for this. It begins this way. The Jew bag, quote, was a character, whatever that's supposed to mean. Gavin wrote in response to a community member's questions about his rampant anti-Semitism, which has been lauded by the likes of David Duke and Richard Spencer. Emily McInnes wrote in another post, I assure you, as a Native American woman raised with a full-blood mother and a long-time liberal, my heart is full and open to all. I'm not assured. Reader, the McInneses did not clear the air. HuffPost received calls and messages from multiple community members who were watching the Nextdoor saga unfold in real time. Gavin McInnes's involvement felt particularly disingenuous, they say, because on Friday he called them a-holes with, oh boy, other rotten words that we don't like, behavior on his podcast in an episode titled, I hate has no home here signs. Anyone displaying such a sign in Larchmont, he said, was another word we don't like much, the R word, although sometimes we feel like using it about Donald Trump himself, but it was a who makes redundant points. And there you go. That's the lovable guy we all know, right? It might have been laughable that Gavin McInnes, a gang leader famous for years of violent misogyny, was now trying to characterize himself as a misunderstood jokester. But locals said they felt threatened above all. These people are lunatics, one Larchmont resident said. It's as if they don't think we know what they've done. Before Monday night, neighbors said they had given Emily McInnes the benefit of the doubt, considering her someone caught in the middle of a drama her husband created with the community. But HuffPost has reviewed evidence that she has intimidated and harassed several neighbors in response to their anti-hate signs, threatening legal action or accusing them in private messages of coming after her family. And they're always the victims in this, aren't they? On multiple occasions, the recipients notified police, HuffPost continued. The individuals who shared the details of those legal threats did so on condition of anonymity out of fear for their safety. Publicly, Emily McInnes has struck a more measured tone, appealing to her neighbors by claiming victimhood or deflecting for her husband and the Proud Boys. She claimed on Monday night that her family was suing the Southern Poverty Law Center and several publications for defamation, apparently over the SPLC's designation of the Proud Boys as a hate group. Anyway, you get the idea. We're getting toward the end of the article. And essentially, just interesting that the whole family appears to be similarly aggressive, even when targeted with something as vague as hate has no home here signs. And, of course, Ordinarily, Western chauvinists would recognize the right of anybody to display such messages on their own lawns, no matter who it bothers. That is, they would allow themselves to do it, but no one else. Anyway, I guess because this article is dated 2019, it doesn't answer anything about what Gavin McInnes is up to now, but it's a good subject for research in the future. Oh well. As I mentioned, there are other articles which are, I believe, more recent. And this one, of course, our alarm going off, letting us know that we're up for another break and then into the next segment, is in fact this article, yes, much more recent. Ryan Riley writing this one for NBC News and dated September 20th. So just by way of a teaser, since we'll have to take our break, Veterans Group presses state and local prosecutors to go after far-right Patriot Front. Now, Patriot Front, you may remember, are the ones who recently have been busted in Idaho, was it? Wherein they prepared to harass and intimidate the, I guess, was it in Boise? They're having a Pride Month march, and they loaded all their people up into U-Haul rental trucks and trucked them to the event, but they got busted on the way there. Yeah, interesting. So now veterans groups stepping in and saying, we don't like this either. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. By the way, during the break, I find in my inbox here on Twitter this comment and an attached article. Thanks to Seth Chipman, who sends this along. I saw this recently about McInnes trying to act like he was a law enforcement target. Maybe it would help him rank up as a Proud Boy. So we do have some information, thanks to alert listeners, that's a little bit more recent about what Gavin McInnes is up to now, which I guess is more of the same, except I understand that, although maybe it's his own propaganda that he's been putting out, that he's stepped back from leadership of the Proud Boys, and I guess that's now Enrique Tarrio, and he disclaims leadership, I guess. But at any rate, this is an interesting little bit. Maybe we'll squeeze this in. Gavin McInnes allies believe Proud Boys founder faked arrest. So Gavin McInnes' allies believe this? Okay. What once looked like an arrest now looks like a desperate bid for attention. Will Sommer reports for the Daily Beast. That sounds interesting. When Proud Boys founder Gavin McInnes suddenly vanished last Thursday, this is dated, by the way, August 31st, 2022. Somewhat more, certainly much more recent than what I had here, but it's not breaking news or anything. We just missed this one entirely because essentially, well, thank God, we're at a who cares moment about Gavin McInnes. Anyway, when he suddenly vanished at some point in August while recording his internet show, that's a good idea. I'm going to vanish now. Bye. Well, first I got to figure out what he was doing, and then I'll go do that. Let's see. He vanished while recording his internet show. Moments he claimed, what? That someone, I don't know what moments, moments later, maybe? He claimed that someone had barged into his studio while he was filming. His fans were immediately concerned. We're shooting a show. Can we do this another time? McInnes said to, I guess this is a poorly edited article, said to someone off camera, adding that he wanted to get a lawyer. "I didn't let you in," McGinnis said finally as he walked off his set. McGinnis's camera filmed an empty chair for another hour. They couldn't turn that off, I guess, which I guess means he has no production crew. That's interesting to know, too. The aspiring comedian's, supporters and detractors both wondered whether McGinnis had been arrested, especially since a Proud Boy facing criminal charges wouldn't be unprecedented. Among other cases, 5 top members of the group have been indicted for seditious conspiracy in the wake of the January 6th riot. On the Telegram social media app, Proud Boys speculated that McGinnis had been detained. Then paranoia set in among McGinnis's conservative circles, where other far-right figures wondered whether they might be next. Right-wing website The Post Millennial declared that McGinnis had been arrested on air. Josh Denny, a comedian and former Food Network host scheduled to join McGinnis in a comedy tour next month, also confirmed that McGinnis had been arrested. So I guess what this tells us about what McGinnis is up to now is mainstreaming himself and pretending that he had nothing to do with the Proud Boys, I guess, except he didn't want to let go of that because that's his real claim to fame. So he may or may not have staged this thing. But what is this idea that he's a comedian? Where does that come from? And that he's preparing for a comedy tour and that Food Network, we got Vice is paying this guy, I guess, probably. We got Food Network people going, this is a hate group founder. Whether he's active with them or not, his whole shtick is he loves to say he'll murder people if they get, in his way. And we're like, let's have a comedy tour. What the hell is this about? Nearly a week later, though, I missed a small paragraph here. Right? Everybody confirming, the Food Network guy said, I confirmed that he's been arrested. And if I'm wrong, it was just a joke. I'm a comedian after all. He's rotting away in jail because he dared to question authority, Denny tweeted, adding a Free Gavin hashtag. Nearly a week later, though, many of McGinnis's fans have come to believe that he faked his disappearance in a bid for attention, which is exactly what I ought to do. Oh no, I'm being arrested, everybody. And now I'll hit the mute button. Okay, and I'm back. Send me money. Because I've been targeted by law enforcement. I'm not kidding though. Really do send me money. Please do that. I appreciate that. Oh yeah. You know what? I'll use that pause to, I'll catch up on one person who actually did do that, except I don't have a name to share with you because, he signed up. There was an email that was associated with it that appears to be a name, but I'm not certain whether that was meant to be read on air given that he signed up in Patreon as Mr. X. That's not like my dad or anything. I go by the Kagro X handle, of course, still on Twitter. But at any rate, it's someone else. But using by the handle. So we'll thank Mr. X and then wait for notice that no, it would be okay to give the name that's associated with the email account or something like that if we would like to actually be acknowledged by name. But in the meantime, we thank Mr. X. Thank you, Mr. X, for signing up with Patreon. Don't forget about that. Patreon, patreon.com/KagroX will bring you to our page. I really do need to work on cutting a new little mini ad about that. I find that when I change things up, it motivates people sometimes to sign up. And I think it's been a year or so since I recorded another one, but it just seems, it's hard to believe that putting in the effort matters that much because do people really care about those things? And then I find that they do. And I guess I'm just not motivated enough by money, but maybe I'll start defaulting on some things and then I'll be more motivated by it. All right. I got to put some work in on that. But thank you to Mr. X who recognizes how difficult it is to get myself to put work in on those things because self-promotion is weird and hard and I don't like to do it. And you say, don't worry, I've got your back anyway. We'll spare you that anxiety and just go ahead and donate based on the old stupid commercial that you cut a year ago. Anyway, if it was easier to fake my arrest and pretend that, or if you would like to believe that and are happy to donate because of that brief detention by police as represented by the 3-second silence in the audio from today, then please, by all means, go ahead. Let that be your motivation. All right, so where were we? Oh, yes, right. So now people think that it was all a hoax and a bid for attention. The local and federal law enforcement agencies that could potentially have arrested McGinnis have all denied involvement, and McGinnis hasn't been charged with any crimes. Now McGinnis, still laying low, is facing backlash from his former allies and supporters over the hoax. McGinnis didn't respond to a request for comment. And I guess that's good news. McGinnis's fake arrest has gone over especially poorly since other Proud Boys have actually been imprisoned. So I guess a little bit of stolen valor upset on that front as well. Sounds like lots of people think it's a prank. The people who say so are probably people that are unknown to us because we don't talk about a whole lot of these guys. Let's see. Matthew Walker, a Tennessee Proud Boy leader, was angry about it. Owen Benjamin, a far-right anti-Semitic figure and former comedian. What's going on here with the comedian thing? He also thinks that it's a hoax. Anybody else? Anybody we recognize? Probably not. But let me jump out of it at this point. To circle back to the NBC article I had open a while ago, just to note that I think it's a nice thing here. Veterans Group, which one we'll find out, presses state and local prosecutors to go after far-right Patriot Front. A new report shared exclusively with NBC News identifies members of the group. That's good because they cover their faces, and details the laws prosecutors could use to bring charges. Ryan Riley, who's been very active on Twitter and letting us all know what's going on in the January 6th defendants' trials, says a military veterans organization is calling on prosecutors to get more aggressive with Patriot Front. You know about who they are. Task Force Butler, an organization founded by U.S. Army veteran Christopher, with a K, Goldsmith. That is a name. Wow. With the tagline, Veterans Fighting Fascism, because that's what, chiefly we've been using our armed forces. Well, we certainly did it in World War II. You got debates about how well we've done since then. But at any rate, we appreciate the sentiment for Veterans Fighting Fascism, and they published a report this week that identifies members of the Patriot Front and specifies criminal statutes it says can be used against them. The report, shared exclusively with NBC News, has been sent to various local and state law enforcement officials in an effort to hold Patriot Front legally accountable for their politically and racially motivated harassment of vulnerable minority communities, their terrorizing of local residents in cities and towns throughout the United States, their acts of violence, and their use of American cities as backdrops to showcase for the media and the nation the ethno-nationalist agenda. He's got them nailed there, and that's what they do. Goldsmith, who said he worked with 10 volunteers on the 200-plus page report, is hoping to spur action by detailing what he says is evidence against dozens of Patriot Front members, in addition to laying out a roadmap for prosecution. After years of looking at this, I have been more than convinced that the FBI, states' attorneys general, and these local jurisdictions all have more than enough evidence to make moves on this neo-Nazi terrorist gang. We, as veterans, are tired of watching fascists run around, hurt people, and not be brought to justice. So if someone needs to do the homework to make sure that justice is found, we're willing to do the homework. Well, round of applause for that. That's actually quite fantastic. And I would like to know how we could support that effort. I'm very interested in this. The Patriot Front, described by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a white nationalist hate group, splintered off from the neo-Nazi group Vanguard America following the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. It gained notoriety over the past year, marching on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. in December, and being the target of a massive data leak that exposed information that can be used to identify its members, who typically wear masks at public events. The group does not provide contact information on its website. Police in Idaho arrested 31 members of the organization in June near the site of an annual LGBTQ event. The group's leader and other members pleaded not guilty to misdemeanor charges of conspiracy to riot, and their cases are still pending. In July, group members marched in Boston, where no arrests were made, but the Task Force Butler report, and I wonder if that's Smedley Butler that they're talking about, says a photograph showing members of the white supremacist group surrounding a black man who was used by Patriot Front in multiple videos published on the internet to promote their group and advocate for similar in-person activity. A year later in Philadelphia, police detained but did not arrest members of the group after members of the public disrupted their march. That was a fantastic move, too, by the way. Plaudits for that one. Mary McCord, former head of the Justice Department's National Security Division, said in an interview that there are several reasons why prosecutors haven't used existing legal tools against groups like Patriot Front. State-level statutes are quite old and have not been used a lot, meaning some prosecutors aren't even aware of them. Many areas where incidents have taken place are short on prosecutorial resources, and there can sometimes be a lack of political will to pursue controversial cases. There is starting to be a little bit more understanding about them and a willingness to actually think about using them in the right case where the facts match up, because you don't want to bring a case and lose and make bad law, she said. You want to make sure there's a strong case. Georgetown Law's Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection, led by McCord, has put together a guide to constitutional provisions and laws in all 50 states that regulate private military and paramilitary activity, with the goal of calling attention to the range of tools that states and localities can use while preparing for gatherings that might draw armed militias. I think that's interesting. The laws are old. I guess they probably were drafted as anti-Ku Klux Klan type laws back in the day and have remained dormant for a long time as the paramilitary organizations sort of drifted off into fantasy land. Didn't really exist much until, I don't know, I guess probably they got revived in the 90s in the wake of the militias claiming to be behind, say, the attacks on the Oklahoma City Federal Building, etc. And then just growing since then. But they've sort of stayed in the background as, these guys fantasize a lot about things. But lately, they've come to the fore, and now they're actually active in places. And people who are in prosecutorial positions don't remember or aren't very familiar with these things because there was a period of 60 to 75 years in which there was no such thing as daily paramilitary activity out there. Anyway, not in the United States, anyway. Mike German, a former FBI special agent who worked on domestic terrorism cases, said the Task Force Butler's work can help draw attention to the ways that prosecutors could build cases against members of the far-right organizations like Patriot Front. All good here. I think we'll skip the rest of it here, but just let you know that was happening and that we're glad of it. We'll look out for more work from Task Force Butler and see if these are people that we would love to get behind in their efforts. It's certainly a good effort. Don't know as much about the people, but it sounds good at the outset. Let me bring you some other stories that have been waiting in the wings, and there are several of which are long-form reads, and we just won't be able to get to, but it's good fodder for future shows. Let me see. Where do we go in terms of bringing you the most for your money in the roundup the last 15 minutes of the show? All right, let's see. Let me go here. This seems interesting. I had seen the tweet of Christian Vanderbroek some time ago. That, let's see, that tweet read, this was back on September 15th. The storming of the Capitol was another sensitive topic, it says. This is a quote from a report here. Another sensitive topic for senior management at the Heritage Foundation. Coffey, Coffey, and we're talking here about who? Well, let's go find out. This Coffey person recalls being required by management to remove a Twitter post condemning the January 6th riots. And that was sort of intriguing. What's going on over at the Heritage Foundation that you get in trouble for trying to distance yourself or heritage from the riots? That seems kind of strange. And it is attached to an article here. Is that what I'm looking at here? Maybe not. But there's another piece alongside of it from the Bulwark, which is where Christian Vanderbroek published. This is his piece, Notes on an Authoritarian Conspiracy. This is, I guess, a different thing. So he seems to be playing on a different theme of the relationship that the right-wing think tanks have with the insurrection. And I mean, we know about Claremont Institute and their connection to it through the fact that they employed John Eastman. But I guess there's more to it than just that, and more history with them that requires discussion. Let me take a look at this piece that he attached to the initial thread from the Heritage Foundation. It's published in the Dispatch, where I don't know if we've read through the Dispatch before, dispatch.com. Partisanship over policy at the Heritage Foundation. This is, again, what he attached to his initial tweet, which caught my eye. And then how did I get to this Bulwark article? I'm not sure. But I think they go together. I need more notes in pocket. Anyway, interviews with more than a dozen current and former employees reveal how the think tank, Heritage Foundation, sidelines its scholars to score political points. And, you know, we've always known that they were a little more political than scholarly, but that's how they started, and that's the facade they keep up so that they can produce quote-unquote scholarly reports that they can hand to Republicans on Capitol Hill, and Capitol Hill types they still seem comfortable with introducing a Heritage Foundation report at a hearing as though it were really, you know, the work of an actual think tank where people think, as opposed to, well, what are the outcomes that we want, and can we make propaganda that props that up? Anyway, where were we? In the weeks after Russian tanks rolled across the Ukrainian border on February 24th, Luke Coffey, there's coffee for you, was busy crafting the Heritage Foundation's proposed policy responses. As the think tank's lead policy analyst on Ukraine, he saw the House's $40 billion supplemental aid package to the country later that spring as the practical culmination of his research. Okay. Let's not blow it. Coffey, then director of the Heritage Foundation's Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign Policy, tweeted on May 10th. Coffey claims that within a day, Heritage senior leadership ordered him to delete the post. Heritage Action, the think tank's 501c4 sister organization, had taken a different view. That is interesting. I mean, that's where you would think the Heritage Foundation would be on Ukraine. But then they make him delete pro-Ukraine posts. What's going on? Executive Director Jessica Anderson implored House Republicans to sink the legislation, writing, "This proposed Ukraine aid package takes money away from the priorities of the American people and recklessly sends our taxpayer dollars to a foreign nation without any accountability." I mean, that part is kind of true, but not recklessly, but without accountability, I guess. The bill passed, albeit over the opposition of 57 Republicans in the House and 11 in the Senate. Well, I was not looped into the decision to put out that press release, Coffey said in an interview. He ended his decades-long tenure at Heritage about a month after the statement's circulation. Other former staffers say they saw trouble long before Heritage came out against the bill. And I guess that trouble must have been about getting people to delete their anti-riot tweeting from earlier on. That's an interesting transition for Heritage Foundation to be making. Now, this is a long article, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. But I also wanted to jump over to the item from the Bulwark that Christian himself wrote. This was, I guess, the point that he was making, and he must have been illustrating that it is an industry-wide phenomenon going on, transforming staid, buttoned-down think tanks into radical propaganda machines that is what is worrying him here. Let's go directly at it here at the Bulwark. Notes on an Authoritarian Conspiracy, it reads, is the title here. Inside the Claremont Institute's 79 Days to Inauguration report. Again, a button-down think tank report. 79 days to inauguration. Well, I'm sure that sounded harmless enough then. There were 79 days to inauguration. But why was the Claremont Institute interested in this? And it's because apparently at least some point more than 79 days to inauguration, they realized that they needed to issue such a report so that it could lay the foundation for what eventually became the January 6th attacks. Claremont Institute, in other words, out there fomenting the insurrection some 80 at least days beforehand. Claremont's post-election war game provides a window into the group's ambitions. So they were one of the groups wargaming what's going to be the outcome of things. We talked about that. Sometimes there were liberal groups ahead of time wargaming. What are they going to do to try to mess with the election? Well, here's what Claremont, which is where John Eastman works, had to say about it. Again, another longish piece. The sun rises on January 6, 2021, while the nation is in crisis. Michigan's presidential electors are in a dispute after a mysterious fire in Detroit destroyed thousands of mail-in ballots. Don't worry about it. This is War of the Worlds type stuff. This is their war game scenario. But it reveals a little something about what they expected to come. So in their scenario, a mysterious fire in Detroit destroys thousands of mail-in ballots, ultimately throwing the election to Congress. The nation's capital is overwhelmed by riots organized by left-wing radicals in their war game. A Republican member of Congress is attacked and critically injured in the violence, potentially depriving Donald Trump of the decisive vote. However, the representative heroically insists on being taken to the House floor. With IVs and blood transfusions being administered, the member casts the deciding vote, giving Trump 26 state delegations and the needed majority. They're talking, of course, about there being an indeterminate tie or something that nobody gets to 270 electoral votes in the electoral vote count, so that they throw the election of the president to the House. And the House breaks up into state delegations casting one vote each, and et cetera, et cetera. And the idea being that, yes, while they expected there to be at least 26 state delegations voting for Trump versus Biden, what if there was an attack against one of the members who would be the critical vote in getting the 26th and therefore majority number of states on board with Trump as president? It's an interesting scenario. This is the grisly climax of a report published in mid-October 2020 by the Claremont Institute and Texas Public Policy Foundation, called 79 Days to Inauguration, prepared by constitutional scholars along with experts in election law, foreign affairs and law enforcement, and media, coordinated by a retired military officer experienced in running hundreds of war games. Among these luminaries were figures such as John Eastman, lawyer for Donald Trump, and the author of a memo advising Vice President Mike Pence to unilaterally block certification of Joe Biden's win. You know exactly what he did. And what's interesting is, oh my gosh, hand-wringing about possible political violence. And then John Eastman says, actually, what about this? What if we needed to do some political violence? Maybe we should. Who else is involved? K.T. McFarland, who served as Deputy National Security Advisor under Mike Flynn, the notorious spy, at the Trump White House. Other participants include Kevin Roberts, then Executive Director of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, soon to be the head of the Heritage Foundation. There's our connection. Also, Jeff, Giese, Giesea. Giese, I have no idea. He is a Peter Thiel protege, as is, what's the guy's name running for Arizona? Blake Masters, right? Or Brock or Brent or Brony, whatever the guy's name is. Ugh, lost track of him. But everybody's a Peter Thiel protege. But also a secret funder of alt-right causes in his own right, I guess. And Charles Haywood, a fringe blogger who anxiously awaits an American Caesar, authoritarian reconstructor of our institutions, apparently one of the quotes gathered from his many writings. Yet despite the author's pretensions to scholarship and rigor, quote, for a simulation to be valuable, the other side gets a vote and actions must be based in realism. The final document is a frenzied and paranoid piece of work revealing of the anxieties and aspirations of the authoritarian right. Practically, the report is an instruction manual for how Trump partisans at all levels of government, aided by citizen posses of Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, for instance, could quite literally round up opposition activists, kill their leaders, and install Donald Trump for a second term in office. And I guess they could do it again. The scenario begins late on election night. The networks have declared Joe Biden the winner, his campaign having upset Trump. Not really. In the state of Texas, in their scenario. That would be a bit of an upset. The call is withdrawn moments later, following reports of a cyber attack involving the state's tabulation system. As it becomes clear there will be no definitive winner on election night, attention shifts to a few battleground states with large numbers of outstanding ballots. And a quote from their report, riots break out in more than a dozen major cities. 14 law enforcement officers are known to have been shot, with one confirmed death. There are unconfirmed reports of a car bombing of a police precinct building in Philadelphia, which, of course, they would all immediately point to as being obvious left-wing violence, when, in fact, most of that stuff is perpetrated by the right wing. Anyway, the violence, as imagined by Claremont and TPPF, overwhelms police and fire officials. Police recede to a defensive posture around their precincts. It is unsafe to maneuver police vehicles down the streets, and responding to calls for service, even emergency calls, is suspended. Fire departments are unable to approach buildings on fire without police escorts, which are not happening. You see, it gets very involved and very dark, and I understand it, but it also turns out that it was part of their own planning for how exactly they would do this thing. Now, I can't finish the thing. I just wanted to make you aware of it. I'll provide some links, and I guess I'll start thinking about, maybe I really do want to read these things, and maybe I can record it. We'll see what conditions are like here at KITM headquarters for preparing for Monday, which will be Rosh Hashanah. We'll see. But maybe this would make good reading for those things, although a bit dark for a New Year's celebration. But hey, maybe what's necessary. But very interesting that this would be used as a roadmap. I was just wondering aloud as I was thinking about all of this stuff and the idea of a cyber attack on the Texas tabulation system, which might have flown better in 2020 than it would in 2024, because, of course, the immediate thought would be, well, maybe Russia is the one disrupting these things. I don't know whether the right wings would want to blame it on Russia or not. But now with Russia losing in Ukraine, the question, I guess, for you to ponder over the weekend is it more likely that they would be able to operationally interfere in American elections, or less likely, given the defeats that they've suffered? Or would the defeats that they've suffered make them at least more motivated to try to attempt such a thing in the United States, as in a desperate last gasp, or at least just to throw a monkey wrench into the new world order that might emerge from their defeat in Ukraine? You decide which one is more likely. Or if you would prefer, I guess you can stand by and let Justice Putnam decide for you.
From networksradio.com.
I have an update for you on that front as well.
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
And the update is, at least there's good news. He's feeling a little better out there on the West Coast, is Justice Putnam, but not well enough to bring you a West Coast cookbook and speakeasy for today, so you'll have to decide this for yourself. I might be able to help you decide that for Monday. We'll see, but at the very least, we'll be back Tuesday live. Have a great weekend. We'll see you then.